Hi, I'm Scott. I'm going to post this little video on um, reconstituting old javelins, not necessarily for competition, because sometimes it's hard to get them to pass muster at the when they get inspected at meets, but mainly to keep them alive for practice javelins, because javelins are expensive. I've dabbled with this a little bit, and I'm posting this to find out what you all know and how you can help out. So tips of javelins, when they start going, unless you can kind of, and they're neat and you can screw them on, when they go, and then it messes up the center of gravity of the javelin, and I've tried all kinds of things to try to keep them alive, but they don't work. So basically, for the tips, when the tips are gone and the javelin's just shot, you're just trying to keep a practice javelin going. So again, I've had very little luck with that once they're really beat up. So I'm re-gripping some for a friend. So the grips go, and if you get the grips functioning, then you can get a functional practice javelin. All right. So you look up the rules, which say that the grip has to be within the center of gravity. So you find the center of gravity, make sure that's the case. But usually, if you just see where the old grip was, you can just replicate where it was. There are rules. It has to be like 6 inches plus or minus something. But again, if it's a practice javelin, not a big deal. The thing I don't know too much of is when they rate javelins for distance, is it just a matter of moving the center of gravity and then the handle chases it, has to be within the center of gravity? And the other thing I don't know is where ideally is the center of gravity in relation to the handle? So if you all know, tell me. Here's the center of gravity, and I find that the ones they have around are toward the front of the handle, like 3/4 way up. Is that ideal? I don't know. All right, here's how we re-grip them. I get 2-part epoxy for my adhesive. So equal parts this and that. And I've got a feel for how much I want. If you too much, you don't use it all. This is 5-minute setup time, which gives me plenty of time to get the cord on. By the way, there's another question. I bought cord from MF Athletics, $39 plus shipping, $50 to cover 3 to 5 javelins, they say. Yeah, it's a little money, cheaper than javelins. But I have a feeling if I looked around, I could find cord in Home Depot or whatnot that it's the same diameter. There are diameter specs on these, so you can't have something too skinny or too fat. Again, even though they're practice javelins, you want the feel to be consistent when they get a legal competition javelin. All right, so I slather my area with glue. Too much and my hands get all yippy, goopy. Too little and the cord won't stick. The MF video I've seen online, which is the only one I've seen online on how to do this, he just uses yellow glue, carpenter's glue. I think 2-part epoxy is a little better for metal to fabric adhesion. So I put some on, and I'm especially cognizant of putting some on at the beginning, where toward the tail end, where the hand, the index finger or whatnot will grip the cord, because that's the one that takes the most beating. But basically I kind of even it out throughout the 6 inches plus or minus that the cord has to be on. Okay. So I've got my epoxy on there. Take the opening of the cord, or the first inch or so. I fray the strands, and they do that so that there's not a big bump at the beginning. That's what the MF fella suggested. If there's a big bump in the beginning where the hand grabs the jab or the index finger hits the jab, then that could be construed as a competitive advantage. I think he regrips his the intent of making them competition worthy. They'll pass all the specs. The ones that I've done in the past, I think my record's about 25%, 50% getting them to pass inspection. At least it's not 100%. So I'm not confident enough to do this with javelins that I really want to see for make sure are eligible for competitions. But for practice jabs, this is plenty good enough. All right. So I've marked where my starting point is. I put the frayed knots here. My camera person comes closer. Okay, so we got a little closer of a shot here, and as you can see, the frayed portion is underneath, and I don't want to put a whole cord underneath because it'll make too big of a bump again. So beginning is the trickiest part. I make sure I have some epoxy below these parts, and then I start unraveling. I have my cord down here so I can just turn the jab, and the cord will start to wrap around. I want some consistent pressure. It doesn't have to be super tight because the cord can will expand and with moisture and such. And I just basically got a little technique here where I'm turning the jab, get the cord on. So as you can see now, I get a little spacing. So I squeeze it together. Trickiest part is I have epoxy on my fingers, and I don't really want epoxy on the outside of the cord. Okay, so that's a decent start. And once you have a start, you can kind of get on a roll here. I'm going to turn the javelin, trying to decide which finger is the messy one and which one's the neat one. Turning the javelin, getting the cord on, trying to keep the gaps out as I go. And now I'm on a pretty good rhythm. I'm going to keep going until I get to my 6-inch mark. I think the specs say 5.9 to 6.3 inches, something like that, in MF regulations. So I know about where my end point ought to be. Pretty good rhythm here. I have just enough adhesive so it'll stick, it'll stay there, but it's not gooping out, it's not squeezing out. So the end is another tricky part, so when I get to the end I'll show you. Again, stolen from this MF or former MF athletics employee, stolen from his video. I'll show you how I finish it up. Alright, I'm approaching the end. This little label is, I want to end right at this label. I've already measured it. And the last 2, maybe 3 courses, I'm going to end up leaving loose because I'm going to tuck the end under those, pull it tight. So sometimes I measure, I do my pi r squared business and figure out how much I need. This time I think I'm just going to roll it out and so I have it plenty. Give myself a little error. Now I want to loosen this up. My epoxy is already a little dry here, so this is tricky, balancing the amount of epoxy you have, making sure it's going to have that double insurance for sticking. Epoxy plus knot. pull it tight and not make a mess of things and get too much epoxy on the top. Alright, so I've got a little epoxy here. I think I'll feel pretty good about this thing staying put. Alright, so this part is a little bit tricky. It's the combination of rolling this tight, squishing it down here so I don't have too much gap, lining it up so okay, and then I'm going to pull this thing tight. Now I have to wrap it. I think I'm within my 5.9 to 6.3 inches, whatever MF asks for. Fortunately, this part doesn't take too much of a beating because the index finger is not on this part, it's toward the tip. Try to get nice and tight. And I'll trim that off later. And I have a functional practice javelin.